items go, thank you very much. We'll welcome everybody to the Cabinet meeting this afternoon. And Happy New Year to everybody. A bit late, but Happy New Year. And we're all freezing. If anybody's watching this, we're not in a nice warm council chamber. We're in a very, very cold council chamber. And everybody, if you see something like that, it's genuinely cold. Anyway, I'll call for apologies for absence. And I know we've got one because Councillor Fox has got the lurgy, so she's off. But no one else is. We're all here. No, we're all here. Okay. Thank you. And item 2 to approve, that's on page 5 to 8, to approve as a correct record minutes of meeting held on 12th of December 2024. So I'll move those. Are we agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Sorry. 2.
Yes, on just on item, where are 6? I don't know that I should declare a non-pecuniary interest because 5 of the items are in Gedling Ward and it is my portfolio. So. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that, Chair. Same.
Thank you. They're noted. Moving on to item 4, which is on, where are we, page 9. That's a forward plan. That's just down for noting. And we agree that?
Yeah.
We are agreed. Thank you. And moving on quickly to 5, which is regulation of investigative powers, commonly known as RIPA. Annual Audit Report to Legal Services Manager Laura. She's there somewhere.
Thank you very, very much. And here we are again for our lovely quick annual RIPA update. I know you all look forward to this one. So RIPA, for anyone who isn't aware, it's the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act of 2000. As a local authority, part of our functions involve the need for various investigations across various areas. And in essence, should any of those investigations involve or require the use of covert surveillance upon a particular individual, so watching someone without them knowing that you are watching them, or to use a covert human intelligence source, so to send somebody in order to obtain such evidence, that type of investigation cannot take place without a RIPA authorisation. And the Act ensures that that is the case. And as a local authority, we have certain officers, namely directors, who can give those authorisations in certain circumstances. There is a crime threshold, which now means unless the offence which is being investigated carries a punishment of 6 months imprisonment or more, then you cannot obtain a RIPA authorisation for that type of work. So other investigation sources have to be used rather than covert surveillance. In essence, that led to a massive reduction in the amount of RIPA authorisations that the council gave because most of the offences are under that threshold. However, we still have the power and ability to make them, and therefore we still have to follow the correct processes and procedures. Our RIPA policy states that there will be an annual audit done and reported back to Cabinet, both with regards to any authorisations and the policy itself. I can report that there have been no RIPA authorisations given in the last year. The policy remains fit for purpose other than the proposed amendments regarding change of positions due to the restructure. So the senior responsible officer who oversees the entire sort of RIPA structure is now the Deputy Chief Executive, and the RIPA Coordinating Officer is now the Legal Services Manager. So those are the only amendments that are suggested with regards to the policy. Officer training was delivered in person in July 2024. Apologies, I think there's a typo in the report that should read July 2024 when the last in-person officer training was delivered. Targeted training to those officers who can authorise the RIPA authorisations is due to be delivered in the next month or so. As I said earlier, it's directors that can make those authorisations, and so we're waiting until all directors are in post before delivering that targeted training to the authorising officers. The other element that Cabinet needs to be updated on is the scrutiny that we come under from the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office, so the IPCO. Do inspect authorities. There was a time when they used to come in person and do an inspection. That has now gone to more a paper-based exercise, especially for authorities like us that don't give many authorisations. In fact, haven't given any for a number of years now. But we are still inspected. And so it is still important that we keep up with the training and that the procedures are in place. We had our last inspection from the IPCO in June of 2023, and that was reported to Cabinet at the last audit. It was positive feedback, so we can expect another paper-based inspection in next year, 2026. So that's the report for the audit on RIPA, and I would ask you to pass the recommendations at page 17. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Any questions? Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair. No question. Just to thank Laura. As she mentioned, we haven't had RIPA authorisations for a number of years, but it's important that officers keep us on the straight and narrow. And thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can I just ask a question, Laura, from the fact that we used to use this far more frequently? This is several years now without it any alteration to it. Do you think it's probably time that we ought to prod some of the MPs in the ribs to say, particularly I'm looking at fly tipping. We used to have some discreetly mounted cameras in different places, and I don't think we can even do that at the moment. And antisocial behaviour, of course.
It is something that I've been speaking to the Manager of Public Protection regarding with regards to cameras. You can, as long as you are signposting that cameras are in use, that's not then covert surveillance. The issue is the crime threshold for the RIPA authorisations, because the offence has got to be punishable by imprisonment to 6 months or more. Now, fly tipping is one of the very few offences that we still investigate that could pass that threshold, but it depends upon the level of the fly tipping involved. But there are other surveillance techniques that can be used that aren't necessarily covert that could assist. But I can't see them changing that crime threshold. But that doesn't mean we can't make an authorisation. If they can come with the grounds to show the seriousness of the offence, then obviously it is something that can be authorised. We have the officers in order to authorise it. It's just passing those extra tests.
I asked that question because it was very useful in the rural areas, protecting farmers and places, where sometimes you get the whole flatback truck where they don't empty the tailgate and it'd just be, and then we've got nothing there to bring to courts in evidence. So it might be worth something to keep an eye on, and under David's remit as community safety, that we perhaps bring something to the council or to cabinet, and then we can forward it to the MPs to try and get something raised to think if we can do something else. Morris, you want to say? Okay. All right. And nobody else? There's no one else. So that's on page 17. Recommendation is note the content and approve the amendments to the Council's regulation of RIPA. I'll move that. Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is a community infrastructure levy, which is Lewis is somewhere down there. It's there. There he is.
Thank you, Leader.
That's our big cheers.
The report starting on page 43 of the agenda pack provides a detailed breakdown of the SIL non-parish neighbourhood receipts which have been collected through the Community Infrastructure Levy and an assessment of infrastructure projects which have been nominated for SIL non-parish neighbourhood funding. Regulation 59A of the Community Infrastructure Levy requires local authorities to expend 15% of all the SIL receipts which are not collected within a local parish on local community infrastructure projects. To date, a total of £379,938 has been awarded to suitable projects within the non-parish area of Gedling, and details of those projects can be found on page 66 of your agenda packs. And as of the 1st of October 2024, Gedling Borough Council held a total of approximately £537,000 available for expenditure on non-parish projects. During the period of September 23 and August 24, 2 new projects were nominated for inclusion on the infrastructure list, and they are the Front Street Public Realm Works and the revitalisation of sports pavilions within the borough. An additional 5 projects were nominated for the previous year were retained on the local infrastructure list, including the Cinder Path extension in Netherfield, the Gedling Youth and Community Hub Regeneration Project, Lamley Village Cricket Club and the Mass Community Sports Development, as well as First Gedling Scouts Group. All of the projects on the local infrastructure list has been assessed in detail within the local infrastructure schedule, project assessment and proposed funding allocations document, and that commences on page 59 of your packs. After careful consideration against the criteria outlined within the regulations, Gedling Borough Council's Sill Neighbourhood portion guidance note, it's recommended that the project's LIS 5, the Ambition Arnold Front Street Public Realms Improvement Works, and LIS 6, the revitalisation improvements of the sports pavilions, specifically King George V Pavilion, Burton Road Pavilion and Oncombe Park Pavilion, are suitable for shortlisting for potential Sill non-parish neighbourhood funding awards. All the projects are deemed to be compliant with Regulation 59F and are located within a ward that has contributed significant Sill receipts from local development. In addition, these proposals are considered to be deliverable in a timely manner and would provide significant public benefits to the public realm and the regeneration of existing community and sports facilities for public use. A full assessment of each of the projects can be found on page 70 of your packs. With regards to the other projects on the local infrastructure schedule, which are not yet recommended for shortlisting at this time, it is considered that each of these projects are retained on the list. It is recommended that they are retained and the officers will continue to liaise with applicants and fellow officers at County Council so that each of these projects can be assisted where possible and hopefully brought forward in future. The recommendation is therefore that the projects included on the local infrastructure schedule and their relevant recommendations are subject to a 4-week public consultation to seek local residents and stakeholder views on their suitability for Sill non-parish neighbourhood funding. Any representations that are received in response to the public consultation will be duly considered and addressed in a report which will be brought back to Cabinet later this year, seeking final approval of awards. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lewis. We've got any comments on this? It's very useful fun, David.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the recommendations all seem sensible. I'm happy to support them. Particularly note LIS 5, the public realm on Front Street. It's only the last meeting that we endorsed the master plan for Ambition Arnold, so it's good to see, even in a small way, that we're making some progress on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay then, we'll move that. It's on page 43. Cabinet approves commencement of public consultation, and that's to commence so early. What does early 2025 mean? Is that up till spring?
Yeah, it will be going out probably in February. The consultation will start, yeah.
And then they could be after that. What
exactly. So it will
does
probably
the final agreement come back here?
Yeah, it will do in April. It probably around about April time.
So they can get on with the business then, can't
Exactly.
they?
So.
Yeah, I was just thinking now with that long lead-in time sometimes to buy materials, etc. So with that, on page 43, item 6, we'll move that. It's been seconded. Shall we agree? You are agreed. Thank you. And then moving on to the interesting one in car park charges, which is always an interesting one for people, which is the next item, which I'll find it in a minute. I'll get rid of all these pages. Go to page 7, item 7 rather. And who have we got that's going to introduce that? Let's have a look. Emma's going to introduce that. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Leader. So on the 3rd of October 2024, approval was granted to commence the consultation on the proposed amendments to the current off-street parking places order. These proposals included 2 key changes to the current order, which were introducing parking charges at Gedling Country Park and introducing a cashless payment option across all Gedling Borough car parks. The Council therefore began to prepare for the consultation by carrying out the following. 1, displaying notices of the proposal in all Gedling Borough Council car parks. 2, by issuing letters to 30 other local authorities or government bodies, including Nottinghamshire County Council. 3, displaying information on the Gedling Borough Council website advising how consultation feedback can be provided. And finally, by posting consultation details on the Gedling Country Park Facebook page. The Council received 75 written responses by email and post prior to the consultation end date. 68 of these raised concerns or objected to the proposal, and 7 were positive about the introduction of the charges. The written responses have been carefully considered as part of the consultation process. There are several reoccurring themes or concerns within the responses, and these have been categorised as per the following. Firstly, regular users. The main objection to the proposed charges was that it would prevent regular users or dog walkers from using the country park on a daily basis. The majority of feedback was from people who use the park up to 2 times a day, and by implementing a charge of £2, this would cost them up to £700 a year. This would prevent them using the park quite as often. A number of people have therefore requested that a permit system is implemented. The council agrees a permit system is a reasonable suggestion and therefore permit shall be available for regular users to purchase for a set price. The council is currently looking into this and full details on how to purchase a permit will be available on the Gedling Borough Council website once the system is ready. Secondly, charging hours. A number of queries were raised as to the hours that the £2 charge will apply, taking into the account the feedback received from the consultation and that a lot of the users are regular dog walkers. The £2 rate will be applicable between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. This will allow the early morning dog walkers the opportunity to continue to walk their dogs without paying for parking if outside of these hours. Thirdly, local congestion and impact on surrounding areas. Several respondents, particularly those living in nearby areas such as Spring Lane, expressed concerns that the new parking fees could result in visitors parking in the residential streets. On-street car parking has been restricted on adjoining residential streets through TROs implemented in 2021. Double yellow lines prevent on-street car parking on the majority of adjoining streets where this was problematic at the onset of the COVID pandemic. The charge of £2 is still very reasonable for the facilities available at the park, and the council therefore do not think it would massively discourage the majority of visitors from using the car park. We are, however, working closely with the county council who are responsible for the surrounding estate roads and will be monitoring this situation closely. Another concern raised was payment methods. There were concerns raised throughout that there would only be one form of payment method for the £2 parking charge. The council can confirm that there will be an option in all council car parks to pay by cash, card, app or phone, including at Gedling Country Park. This will therefore offer visitors a wide range of payment option and is not restricted to app only. 5. Impact on events and volunteers. There is a clear concern throughout the response that parkrun events which rely heavily on volunteer participation will be negatively impacted. Volunteers and participants fear the additional costs associated with parking will lead to reduced participation or force people to stop volunteering. A review has been carried out of other parkruns in the area, and 40% of these also charge for parking. Fees vary between £1.50 and £2 for these events, and therefore the proposed cost of £2 is in line with other parkrun events. Parkrun attendees could also purchase a permit once the system is implemented. It is, however, worth noting that the Friends of Gedling Country Park volunteers will continue to receive free parking. Although the majority of the consultation responses are against the proposal, a number of the respondents expressed support for the introduction of parking fees, with the understanding that funds would be used to maintain and improve the park. Gedling Country Park is a flagship green space for the council with large areas of open space, footpaths and wildlife for all to enjoy. It is designated as a local nature reserve and has consistently retained its Green Flag Award status, which recognises well-managed parks and green spaces. The council has ambitions to continue and develop the park, and the introduction of car parking charges could be a means of facilitating those improvements. Voluntary donation boxes have been in place at Spring Lane Car Park since January 2018 with a suggested donation of £1. The returns from these have been extremely low, with a maximum income of around £6,000. The cost of maintaining the park is significantly more than this, and therefore implementing a parking charge will assist with maintaining and improving the park facilities on offer. It is important to note that all income generated will be reinvested back into Gedling Country Park. Any excess of income over expenditure each financial year will be added to an asset replacement sinking fund for the country park. It is therefore proposed that approval is given to commence the statutory procedure to amend the parking order in order to introduce parking charges at Gedling Country Park between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. It is also proposed that they introduce a cashless option across all Gedling Borough Council car parks. It is also proposed that a permit system for regular users shall be introduced for a set fee, as agreed by the Chief Exec in consultation with the portfolio holder. It is also proposed that approval is given for the Friends of Gedling Country Park and associated volunteers to park without a charge. Finally, it is approved that a capital budget of £12,000 is established to purchase 2 new pay and display machines for the Gedling Country Park. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Thorough, easy to listen to and easy to understand report. So are there any comments? David?
Thank you, Leader. Excuse me. Yeah, I remember 2015, was it? That wet March Saturday that the country park was opened, wet and windswept, and it's completely different now. And I think the figures in the report indicate just how big a success it's been. It's something we can be proud of. I can understand why people who would rather not pay for parking at the country park if they can avoid it. As the report points out, we need the money to maintain it and guarantee its future. So I'm quite happy to support that element of the report, and the different ways of paying in the other car parks makes perfect sense to me as well. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Jenny?
Thank you, John, and thank you, Emma, for the report. I can absolutely understand why people don't want to pay. None of us want to pay too much. And I'd like to thank those people who did take part in that consultation and took the time and effort to actually respond. The problem is it's such a popular asset that it gets a lot of wear, so it needs a lot of maintenance. I would not like to get to 2 or 3 years' time when we've got to close parts of the park or the car park because they're a liability both to people and to this borough. £2 seems to compare very favourably with other authorities. It may well be that usage might drop off for the first few months after it's introduced. That's been the case in other parks where charges have been introduced. But they do tend to come back when people realise that the £2 is actually worth the wonderful asset that is there for them. The other thing I'll say as leader is that there is free car parking still on Lamley Lane, and there is access to the park, particularly for dog walkers, to park there for nothing and still access the park. So there are alternatives. I absolutely understand the concern of neighbouring properties, and I think it's something we need to monitor very closely and make sure that the County Council take action should a particular issue arise in particular areas. We did it with the new estate. We got yellow lines in there and resolved those issues. So we do the same again with Spring Lane and take up any issues as they arrive. And I expect the County Council to take prompt action on any parking problems there. So yes, fully support the implementation of this. The cost will go to the park and the maintenance. I'm very pleased that the permits have been included. I think that's an incredibly sensible idea for people who use the park regularly. So that's a good concession. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Jenny. Viv?
Yeah, just thank you, Leader, and thank you, Em, for the report. It was really clear. It's a very difficult decision that we've had to make. Nobody wants to stop people from using the parks. But I think, as my colleagues have said, and as the report clearly states, it's funding that we need. I also welcome the fact that 75 people took the time to respond, from a positive or not. I think it's good. It shows how much the park is thought of. It is extremely well used. I really do feel in the report that we've addressed the concerns and the worries that people have. The permit, I think, is a really good way, so that, over the year, if you're a regular user, a permit will be, definitely worth purchasing. I'm really pleased that, obviously, the really important group there are the Friends of Gedling Country Park, who do a tremendous amount of work on the park, supporting what we're doing, helping us. They've got a real passion about the park. I think it's really important that actually those volunteers are not penalised, and so they have free permits, which I think is really good. And I think the fact that we are bringing in, I'm a dog walker, dog owner. I think the fact that it's 8 till 6, it does give the opportunity for people going out before they go to work to take the dogs for a walk and avoid having to pay the parking, and also when you come back in the evening at 6 o'clock. So I really do feel it's difficult, but I really do feel that we've tried to accommodate all that we can, and I think we've been very reasonable. I fully support what we're doing, Leader.
Thanks, Viv. Anybody else? No one else? I just ask Emma on the, I'm fully supportive of it because it's in a way, it's a victim of its own success. We've got hundreds of thousands of people going there, and if you walk on that carpet backwards and forwards, it gets worn out and has to be replaced. And it's a similar thing with that. Sooner or later, on its 10th year anniversary next year, we'll need to do significant maintenance on that site, and now we've found a way to fund it. And I don't think most people will be against that, providing that money is used properly. Could I ask did we build in say, a honeymoon period at the start, because people will get there and think, never thought about it, all those types of things. So if we've not got that in, that probably needs to be added. But it's also is added to what you said about the collection. First year, I think we got about 11,000, and it's just tapered off. And I know, I can go up in a park, and I've got a pass for all sorts of car parks. But I always put money in the box because I appreciate what's up there and there's a hidden saving there. And to the NHS, we probably ought to claim off them because lots of people, through being a lot healthier, through walking and taking time out in the fresh air, has made probably less calls on the NHS. There's all sorts of things like that. But I think this, handled properly, and I'm glad that Mike was chased through the fact that we've got still, lots of people use cash. So that we've got cash machines, we've got the flashy card job, and what's the other bit we've got? It's an app. Telephone. Telephone, that was it. So I know in some places it's telephone only, and it's an absolute pain to get it through. I think we've looked at it well, we've listened to what people have said, but just an answer on that, whether we could build that in so there's from day one, start prosecuting people or whatever they do with it, when, give them a ticket.
Yeah, we can factor that in. We've still got to, once approval's granted, we've got to do the amendments to the parking order anyway, and then signage will have to go up. So we're looking at spring earliest, but yeah, we'll put signage up and have a period of grace to allow people, once the signage is up and the machines are in, just to obviously allow that settling in period.
And the other thing is, because have we got any machines yet? Because lead-in time, if it's anything like CCTV cameras, is about a year to get these sort of things.
I think it's about 6 to 8 weeks, I'm assured. So yeah, we should be fine for spring.
If there aren't any further comments, I'll move that recommendation, which are 4 items there. One's on excuse me, one page 125, there are 2 on there, and there's 2 on the back on 126. I'll move those. Seconded, and yeah, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, which is budget monitoring and environment report. So where's Tina? She's down on the left wing today.
Thank you, Leader. So the first report I'm bringing for you this afternoon is the Budget Monitoring Environment Report from April to November 2024. Sorry, it's actually, that is an error. It should actually say August to November 2024. So this is the second monitoring report that we're bringing you this year. If you recall, we made a bit of a change on a trial basis where we're actually bringing you 3 sets of budget monitoring this year. So this is a key decision because there is a number of approvals required for viaments and use of reserves and changes to the capital programme. So we're starting off with an approved budget of 14.937 million, which was approved by full council in March 2024. There have been some movements during the first 8 periods, some overspends and some additional income, but we are still reporting a balanced outturn position for the end of the financial year. Last year, we reported some significant overspends in the Environment Department and informed you that Finance were working with the service managers to assess the budgetary requirements to deliver services and carry out a zero-based budget exercise, as we don't believe that historical incremental budgets have taken into account considerable changes to the increases in service demand. Waste is the first service to be looked at. This work is still ongoing, as the new waste system has not yet been implemented, so data is difficult to determine at this point. However, initial work on the current number of rounds needed in waste services has identified that growth in housing numbers in the borough are not fully reflected in terms of budget needed to deliver those services, so a high reliance on agency staff. This will result in additional budget being allocated to ensure that budgets in the new financial year are more aligned to service delivery. Also, additional major variances that we are reporting this period. So we've already talked about additional staffing costs in waste services due to the extension of temporary posts and agency staff of around about £90,000. There's also additional agency staff costs in overtime in the fleet services area. This is to cover temporary arrangements due to staffing issues, and that's around £30,000. Additional staff required in the cemeteries of £40,000 for cutting and maintenance of services due to the significant spring bloom that we had in 2024. We've had an increase in the minimum revenue provision. Now, this is a charge that we have to make to the revenue in respect of paying off the principal sum of any borrowing that's undertaken to finance the capital programme. It's a legislative charge, so we have to do this. So we've added in an additional £88,000 to ensure that the provision is aligned to the capital programme, to the current capital programme. We've also had a reduction in income of major planning applications of around about £150,000. This is due to some major applications that will slip into 25-26. So although we do expect these major apps to come forward, they will slip into the new financial year, and therefore the income will as well. And we've also had a decrease in building control income of £60,000. All this, as I said, we are still looking at a balanced budget position despite this, because this is all offset by additional income that we're expecting in our leisure centres of around about £340,000 and an increase in land charges income of around about £40,000. So the additional income has enabled the offsetting of the above overspends for the first 8 months. So the pay award that we included in the budget was £930,600. And we assumed an average of around about £1,925 per employer as per previous years. However, the national employers proposed a final increase of £1,290 per person, which has now been agreed. This has resulted in savings of £295,000 from the budget, which has all been taken into account in the forecast outturn figures that we've just spoken about. Moving on to the efficiency programme, so you will recall that the efficiency programme set out for delivery in 24-25 is £406,000 and also some deferrals from 23-24 of around about £427,000, given an overall delivery target for the financial year of £833,000. Deferrals of £134,800 have been proposed into 25-26. The majority of this relates to part-year staffing reviews in the parks and street care and waste services while we undertake reviews and look at round optimisation. Proposals will need to be reviewed in light of additional budgets to ensure that there is no double counting of efficiencies identified as part of the digital transformation. And as part of this report, we are requesting that £30,000 be removed from the efficiency programme, which is for the increased council tax on empty and second homes. Whilst this efficiency has in fact been delivered, it will be delivered through the collection fund and not through the general fund. So therefore, we just need to remove it from the general fund efficiency programme. This leaves a revised delivery expected in 24-25 of £611,000 at 100. However, as I've just said, we will need to revisit this and revise some of these in line with the 25-26 budget when we refresh the MTFP, as we will have some slippage in there. The MTFP, so that's the medium-term financial plan for the next 5 years, sets out an efficiency requirement of £3.5 million. This includes the £834,000 that we've just spoken about, and a further £500,000 is expected from efficiencies from the digital transformation, which leaves £2.2 million worth of efficiencies to be found in the medium term by 28-29, and this is in order to maintain a balanced budget position. Currently, we are in the process of looking at new and revised proposals as part of the 25-26 budget process, and we're working currently with members to outline some of these proposals, and they will be presented for consideration and approval at a later date, and as part of the budget report that will go to Cabinet in February. So moving on to the capital programme, we have an approved budget. We started the year with an approved budget of £9.3 million in March, plus carry forwards of £2.3 million. Approvals in the first 8 months give a current approved capital programme of just over £10 million. There are a number of proposals for additions to the programme and other amendments, and these are detailed in the table on page 171 of your packs, which we are requesting approval for. And if these are accepted, it will give a revised programme of £9.45 million for the year. Significant amendments to the programme include the refurbishment of Conway Road tennis courts, around about £146,000, which will be funded by grants. both from the Lawn Tennis Association and from UK SPF funding. An additional refuse food waste freighter costing £105,000 following the requirements of new legislation for trade food waste will be funded through the current vehicle replacement programme, as a number of vehicles that were due for replacement this year will be deferred to the following financial year, and these total about £537,000. And this is pending a full review of fleet vehicles and current lead times to purchase those vehicles. The financing of the capital programme is still predominantly through borrowing, 41%, and grants, around 42%, as shown in the chart on page 173 of your packs. And thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Tina. Questions? None? You've stunned everybody, Tina. You've stunned everybody with the figures. So you sure they're right?
Leader,
Yeah.
just thank Tina and say I'm pleased to hear her say that the deferment of the replacement vehicles is not a deferment, it's the lead-in time for the vehicles, just pushes it into a new financial year. So the vehicles will be there when needed.
Yeah, it is. That's why I said that at the end of the last bit. The lead-in time to get things now is quite significant. So. No, Jenny, no? No further questions then? Okay, on page 167, you've got 3 there. Approve the general fund budget. Note the use of reserves and funds, and 3, to approve the changes in the capital programme. I'll move those. We seconded and agreed. Yep. We are. Thank you. We're moving on, still with you, Tina, which is the Prudential Code indicator monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you. This is one you all love that you find really interesting. This is the Prudential Code Indicator Monitoring and Treasury Activity Report for the periods of August to November 2024. Sorry, excuse me. We start off with an economic update. So you probably already know that economic growth has stalled in the early part of the last 4 months. So June and July, really not an awful lot happened. It showed a very mild slowdown of growth, around about 0.1% between July and September 2024. So that's a slowdown. So rather than dropping back into recession, which is not expected. Looking at inflation, so the Consumer Price Index, which is a measure of cost of living of a typical person, rose by 2.6% in the 12 months to November 2024. And this was up from 2.3% in the 12 months up to October 2024. So core CPI is a very similar measure of inflation, but removes energy and food prices because they can be volatile, so sometimes a bit more meaningful to us. Overall, this has increased by 4% in the 12 months to November 2024, and this is up from 3.3% for the 12 months up to October 24. In terms of bank rates, the Monetary Policy Committee reduced interest rates from 5.25% to 5% in August. Rates were held steady for September and October, but they decided to make a further 0.25 percentage point reduction in November to 4.75%. Although inflation has reduced overall, interest rates have gone down. The overall growth in the economy has stalled slightly. The tightness in the labour market that we've seen over the past kind of like 12 to 18 months has gone down. It continues to go down. Wage growth is on that downward path, and job vacancies fell from 908,000 early in the year to around about 872,000 in June, and down to 857,000 in July, which is now just 5% above its pre-pandemic levels. So wage growth is kind of like going back down to how it was pre-COVID. Our Treasury Manager Advisors Link have provided a forecast of interest rates, and they do this every quarter for us. They did expect, excuse me, They did expect interest rates to fall to 4.5% in December 24. However, this did not happen, as only 3 members of the Monetary Policy Committee voted for the decrease, so it remained at 4.75%. So that's a bit of an update from what you actually have in your packs. The expectation is that they will continue to fall back to around about 3% in September 2026. But as I say, that is a bit of a moving feast, and we do get regular updates on those interest rate forecasts, which we'll bring you as part of monitoring. So despite interest rates falling, we continue as a council to generate a good rate of return from our investments, and we are currently still optimistic that we can achieve the budgeted £1.1 million for 24-25, which was approved as part of the annual budget setting process. We do, however, acknowledge that this is likely to reduce for future years, which will put additional pressure on the council's revenue budget. So we need to continue to monitor investment returns and report any potential changes as part of our future reports to you. Treasury management activity for August to November is set out in Appendix 1 of your packs. So most of the funds, that we have are invested in money market funds. These are highly liquid and secure, and they're AAA investments. We have no changes to our counterparty limits in November, which remain generally around 3%, but we do have the ability to have a higher limit of 4 million per money market fund if it's deemed prudent. We have no limits with the amount of investments that we can put to the DMO. So that basically means that currently all our money market funds have a ceiling of 3 million, so we don't put any more than £3 million in those so that we can spread our risks. But with the DMO, the Debt Management Office, then we have no limit. We can put as much as we want in there. So we received £604,000 interest from our money market funds in the period of April to November, which is an overall equated rate of around about 4.57%. This is slightly lower than the compounded sterling overnight rates of 4.86%, but nothing to really worry about. It's there or thereabouts. You'll recall that we have £1 million invested in the CCLA Property Fund, which is a local government treasury approved scheme. We've reported over a number of quarters now that investment has reduced month on month on. We're, delighted to be able to tell you that that's actually increased this time by £10,000 between July and November. So the value currently is sitting at £882,000. So whilst the value of the investment has reduced by £117,000 over a 7-year period, we do receive a dividend of around about £45,000 each year on that investment. So the value is still expected to fluctuate as it's a long-term investment. And if you remember, I do tell you that, we do need to hold our nerve on this because it will start to go back up, and we are seeing that now, and hopefully that will continue. A growth after so many reductions is such a positive step. We do monitor this closely, and we take advice on that investment. And we are currently satisfied that the investment is still sound for the longer term, so we would recommend that we do actually stay in there. We haven't taken any new borrowing. Interest rates are reducing, so we may need to consider the optimal time now for any additional borrowing needed. Although we can't borrow in advance of need, our capital financing requirement sets out the amount of borrowing that we are likely to need in the medium term to fund our capital programme. We continue to borrow internally to fund the capital programme. However, the rate of internal borrowing is now 42%, which is marginally lower than the approved indicator of 45%. So we need to keep our eye on this because it does mean that we may need to consider borrowing sooner rather than later. But I will update you if that needs to happen sooner. Appendix 2 sets out the performance against the approved prudential indicators, which are key measures of affordability. In July, we reported to you an increase in the capital expenditure, which was due to carry forwards of deferred schemes and requested approval to increase this indicator. However, as discussed at that time, it was only a temporary increase, And now other schemes have been deferred into future years. The expenditure has fallen back to £9.4 million against an indicator of 9.7, so it is well within approved limits. All other indicators are within agreed and approved parameters. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, just a huge thank you for that information, and especially managing to deliver it, because I know you're not feeling very well today, so double thanks from us all.
Anyone else? Mike?
Thank you, Leader. Just point of clarification on this report and the last one, if there are any recommendations to change to the capital programme, which was on the last one. It didn't say that, but it should be reported to Council as well. It is on the forward plan as being reported to Council. Just wanted to clarify that, both this report and the previous one will be reported there as per normal. Apologies, it was a different officer who wrote it, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you pointed out that as well, Tina, that the £1 million loan, yes, it is down, but it's a significant interest in those 7 years that make it. You can see it's a good investment. You've got your eye well on it, so it's good to see that.
And going back up, so it's often to go back up.
Yeah, so that's good to see that. The other is that's jumping about on Twitter and everything else about the gilts and that. I'm not quite sure, or, bonds and everything else. Are we invested in anything like that?
No.
Our other investments?
No, but potentially it's something that we could look at for funding long-term capital programmes in the future. So it's something we are keeping our eye out for.
Great, thank you. No further questions, so we'll move that. That's on page 195. 2 recommendations, note the report and note the Prudential Treasury Indicator monitoring. We'll move that, seconded, and we agreed. That's it, that's good, that's finished, and then we come down, that's it. Well, I've just got down on here with where we've got item 10, which is any other items Chair considers urgent. And I think this is, as a Cabinet and to the people of Gedling, that we ought to have some piece on about devolution. It's being thrown at us from all corners at the moment, and I don't like what I'm hearing because we're being dictated to at the moment. And I think we ought to debate it here, and I think we also try and get the general public to look at what they think about it, so we can take some feedback from them, and then we can feed it into government, because it's suddenly come out of, it was always coming, but it seems to be quite a strong message now that you're going to be split up, join the city, join Broxtowe, join something else. So I think if that's right, we can have a debate at Cabinet in, say, the next one, because there's a lot coming at us, isn't there? Every day it changes, and people are now the District Council's network, the County Council's network, and everybody else. They're not nervous they are nervous of change, but they don't want it imposed on them. So we do need to debate that so people can see it through a public forum like this, or if necessary, we'll have to go out and try and explain what the government are trying to do. Okay, are we agreed? Yeah. Agreed, thank you. And with that, say thank you very much. And we'll go back downstairs and try and balance the budget.